This video presents a brief talk on the concept of enlightenment in ancient Greek philosophy. The term Lysis, L-Y-S-I-S, is the nearest ancient Greek equivalent to what we mean in modern parlance by enlightenment. It was first used in Pythagorean circles as far as we know. It meant a setting free, a loosening, and a solution. For the Pythagoreans, it seems to have meant something very similar to Buddhist or Hindu or Jain enlightenment. It meant the soul or psyche becoming free from entangling karma and being freed from painful and difficult future rebirths. Pythagoreans, of course, believed in reincarnation. The Orphic traditions also used the term lysis, and from there it got into the vocabulary of the mystery schools, Eleusis, etc., and referred to the experience which the mystagogue had there, which brought salvation and liberation. Liberation from what? From the belief that this world of the senses is all that there is. The realization that there is a spiritual world in which our souls, our psyches, have their true home. That there is an inner dimension to being. That this visible world is only the tip of the iceberg. To feel in touch with this, to know one's own soul, was to come home, to reach Lysis. It was the endgame for the Greek philosophers. It gave our contingent existence here an absolute bedrock of faith, of certainty, and it was this faith that enabled Parmenides, for example, to posit the existence of the eternal One, which vision arose from him out of Lysis, or gave Empedocles the faith to jump into Mount Etna, knowing that his soul could not die, or which gave Socrates the ability to drink his hemlock without batting an eye. Socrates and his pupil Plato introduced a new dimension to Lysis. For Socrates it meant a puzzling out, a figuring out of a difficult problem, either logical or ethical, usually both. First comes aporia, stuckness. The philosopher asks so many questions, he gets stuck. He becomes unable to think it out. He gets into aporia, stuck, perplexed. Then he thinks it through. He talks to his friends. He or she reasons it out. He practices dialectic. Suddenly, eventually, he works it out. He sees the solution. It's like a light going on in the head, an enlightenment experience. At this point comes Lysis, the solution. There can be bigger and smaller moments of Lysis for the Greeks then, but the main one is the answer to the meaning of life, the riddle itself, the solution to the great conundrum for all philosophers, the why are we here question. For Plato, Lysis continues in this vein. He waxes lyrical about it. He invents the simile of the cave and the sun in the Republic to explain it. The philosopher is someone who not only sees through the illusions or shadows on the cave wall, but becomes free of his chains and leaves the cave and goes out into the bright sunlight. This is Lysis, enlightenment. All of Platonic thought, the idea of the forms, the role of philosopher guardians in society, is all premised on this Lysis experience. Plato also asks a fundamental question. What does a philosopher do once he or she has had this experience of Lysis? Do they stay in the ideal world of archetypal forms and renounce the world, breathing a sigh of relief to have escaped the torments of anguish and emotional grief and suffering in the non-philosophical world? No, for Plato, the calling is equivalent to the Mahayana ideal of the Bodhisattva. The philosopher returns back into the cave, back down to the marketplace, and shares as much as possible with those who will listen the nature and possibility of Lysis, the existence of enlightenment. There is a touching passage in Plato which describes this duty of the philosopher. There is also a dark foreboding over this task, for having witnessed his own teacher, Socrates, a fairly enlightened person, destroyed by the mob of fickle demagogues, he realized there is a price to pay. He also had the tragic example of Pythagorus, who was also put to death by an angry mob of ruffians, jealous of his wisdom, seeking to storm his academy at Crotona by storm and setting fire to it, in the flames of which he is said to have perished. Hanging over the business of Lysis right from the start, then, is the shadow of phobosophy, fear of Lysis, jealousy of Lysis, anger at Lysis. Lysis as something you can steal or prevent or control. State fear of Lysis. One could go so far as to say that Plato therefore politicized Lysis. His strategy was to put Lysis at the heart of the business of government, but it remained for him largely an aristocratic business. The mob, the slaves, couldn't really obtain Lysis. Aristotle continued this thought, but was a little more distrustful of the mystical side of Lysis. For him, logic was the best, the surest way to Lysis. Aristotle begins the tradition of Lysis as analysis, which is in fact a derivative term. By analyzing something, you loosen its conceptual ingredients. You boil it right down to first principles. You ask, what kind of a thing is it? Then you can categorize it. Indeed, by developing his logical systems of analysis, Aristotle breaks everything down into a phenomenon definable by reference to variables, substance, quantity, quality, relation, place, time, position, state, action, and passion. And Aristotle applies his passion for analysis to everything, and in doing so he invents science, zoology, botany, biology, political theory, economics, metaphysics, ethics, literary theory, linguistics, psychology. With his encyclopedic mind, Aristotle starts the Western mind out on a quest, which has continued ever since, and inspired both the Hellenistic traditions of Alexandria and the later medieval university systems, with their faculties and departments and knowledge factories, churning out more and more details about infinitely divisible particles of knowledge. Notwithstanding the so-called Baconian rejection of Aristotelian method, In fact, scientific method only built on the work of early scholastic Aristotelian thought. The modern Western scientific mind, and the institutions through which it expresses itself, namely the university and academic system, remains thoroughly Aristotelian. And the problem, of course, is that Lysis per se is almost chased out of that system. In the West, unlike in, say, a Buddhist university or in Nalanda, you aren't expected to experientially cultivate the experience of Lysis as you complete your essays or dissertations. In fact, 99% of academic discourse seems founded on the premise that it doesn't exist, and that the chase of it is folly or madness. And yet, paradoxically, it does exist in Aristotle and in the Aristotelian thought world. In the Metaphysics, Aristotle explains that there is a prime mover. There is a place in which all the disparate phenomena of reality converge and are integrated in the noetic experience of the knower. There is an inner knowingness in which the philosopher achieves Lysis ultimately and finally. Perhaps in his lost esoteric works, which were purely orally transmitted, Aristotle discoursed about this. In what we have remaining today, it is merely hinted at. But enough hints are there for us to appreciate what kind of an experience Aristotle meant by Lysis, and we could characterize it as a kind of jnana yogic experience. It is the achieving of a vision of the metaphysical unity and purpose underlying all phenomena, a vision of the force which created and sustains the universe, theos, which moves all things through the power of love. Enlightenment, then, for Aristotle is hiding in his metaphysics, as he says, "For the science which it would be most meet for God to have is a divine science. And so is any science that deals with divine objects. And this science alone has both these qualities. For one, God is thought to be among the causes of all things, and to be a first principle. And two, such a science either God alone can have, or God above all others. All the sciences, indeed, are more necessary than this, but none is better." Other Greek philosophical traditions had room for Lysis. The Stoics particularly made metaphysical bedrock out of it, such that the philosopher who had strived for and attained enlightenment then had to live out his role in the world as a fulfillment of cosmic duty. Knowing oneself a citizen of the cosmos, one still had to play the part of wife, husband, teacher, lover, friend, emperor, but one's real home was known as somewhere else. Thus Zeno of Citium, thus Marcus Aurelius, thus Cicero. Thank you for watching. Please like and share this video, hit the subscribe button, and feel free to ask me any question in the comments section below. Due to the sacred nature of these videos, I would prefer to keep them ad-free. Please help me to do that by clicking the Patreon link in the description box below and make a donation to this channel. Every dollar counts. Thank you for your support.